something in deep space just broke every law of physics. The Comet 3I Atlas, a visitor from beyond our solar system, suddenly changed course toward Earth. And then, without warning, it started transmitting. Not random noise, a repeating pattern no natural object should ever make. NASA's data feed cut off mid-signal, and no one has been able to explain it since. Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Astronomer, a quiet place where even the loudest mysteries are explored softly, patiently, one breath at a time. If these cosmic journeys through the unknown bring you calm and curiosity, subscribing to the Sleepy Astronomer helps this constellation of wonder grow, so more dreamers can drift through science beneath the same endless sky. Tonight we follow 3I Atlas, the interstellar wanderer now at the center of the strangest mystery in modern astronomy. Was this a cosmic accident? A glitch in our instruments? Or something else entirely? Breathe slowly, because by the end of tonight's journey you'll see why scientists everywhere are asking the same quiet question. What if the universe just spoke first? This is the Sleepy Astronomer. The night begins quietly. The observatory sits high above the city, where the air thins and the stars burn with a clarity that almost hurts to look at. The hum of the telescope is constant, like the soft breathing of a creature that never sleeps. You lean close to the monitor, watching the screen refresh again and again, each image a frozen moment of the heavens. Most nights are routine, stars as they always are, planets tracing predictable arcs, galaxies whispering from their unimaginable distances. But tonight, something interrupts the calm. At first it is nothing, a thin line, barely visible, cutting across the frame, a cosmic scratch, a flicker of motion that should not be there. You blink, expecting it to vanish, but there it is again, sharp, distinct, and impossibly swift. It lasts less than a second, yet the moment stretches in your mind, widening into eternity. Somewhere in the control room someone inhales sharply. Another voice murmurs, "Run it again." The image reloads, the line remains. You feel your pulse rise, though you're not sure why. Objects streak it across the sky all the time, and meteors, satellites, bits of space dust burning in silence. But this one feels different. Its path is curved, deliberate, not the straight fall of debris or the mechanical rhythm of an orbiting craft. It seems to enter the frame from nowhere and leave it toward forever. For a heartbeat, it feels as if the universe itself just blinked at you. The data begins to stream in. Coordinates, velocity, brightness, angle, numbers marching down the screen like tiny, precise soldiers. Someone compares it to the catalogue of known bodies, cross-checking for comets, asteroids, human-made junk. The line does not match anything. The air in the observatory grows still, except for the whisper of machines and the quiet tap of keyboards. You can feel curiosity spreading, a silent contagion among those who have dedicated their lives to watching the sky. Outside, the night remains unaware of your discovery. The wind brushes the metal dome, the stars shimmer indifferently, and yet you feel something shift, a subtle change, as though the cosmos has acknowledged your gaze. You think about how many times in history light has travelled unnoticed, how many messages have passed through the solar system unseen. Tonight, one beam of light has chosen to be noticed, or maybe you think softly you have chosen to see. The streak of light is faint, but its story is long. It began far away, perhaps in another system entirely, a place with its own suns, its own forgotten worlds. It may have wandered for millions of years, crossing the emptiness between stars, gathering silence like dust. To reach this moment, it had to survive collisions, gravity wells, and the slow dissolving of time itself. And yet, here it is, captured on a human screen seen by human eyes. You realize you are witnessing something older than language, older than Earth itself. The astronomers begin to argue gently, their excitement wrapped in caution. Words like hyperbolic trajectory and non-periodic object drift through the air. You listen, half understanding, half dreaming. The numbers confirm what your intuition already whispers. This object is not bound to the sun. It will not loop around in a predictable path. It comes once and will not return. You are looking at a visitor from another star. A quiet awe fills the room. It is not the loud wonder of discovery, but the kind that makes you whisper without realizing. You think of the first humans who looked up at the night sky and trace shapes between the stars, how they must have felt, sensing stories in the darkness. Tonight, you share that same instinct, though your tools are different. You no longer draw the constellations with imagination. You trace them with data and light. Yet the feeling is the same, a sense of connection that hums in your chest, like the faint vibration of distant gravity. The flicker is catalogued now, 3I/ATLAS, they call it. The third interstellar object ever found, after Oumuamua and Borisov. Its name sounds technical, but behind it lies wonder. 3I for the third interstellar, ATLAS for the telescope that found it. A string of letters and numbers that to scientists carries the weight of meaning. To you, it feels like a name whispered by the sky itself. Every new designation is an invitation to look deeper. In the following days, observatories around the world turn their gaze toward it. The comet's position is confirmed, its trajectory mapped. It is fast, far faster than anything born of this solar system. Its orbit slices through ours at a steep angle, as though it has burst in from the edge of existence. News spreads through the scientific community like a pulse of light through darkness. You imagine telescopes on mountaintops, in deserts, in orbit, all aligning, all waiting for another glimpse of the visitor. Each image that comes in feels like a heartbeat. The faint streak becomes a speck, the speck a shape, the shape a story unfolding pixel by pixel. You begin to sense a pattern, not in the data, but in yourself. A feeling of being seen. The comet does not know you, of course. It is only ice and dust, indifferent to its observers. Yet standing beneath the vastness of the sky, you cannot escape the feeling that something has noticed humanity, that the universe, for a brief instant, has turned its gaze in your direction. You think about what it means to witness the unknown. Discovery, after all, is as much about reflection as revelation. To see something new is also to see yourself anew, your curiosity, your hunger for meaning, your fragile hope that you are not alone in the immensity. The comet's light is ancient, but the wonder it awakens feels young. It reminds you that every gaze upward is an act of faith, a quiet belief that the cosmos still has stories left to tell. The night deepens, the data continues to pour in, filling drives and minds alike. The comet moves steadily across the firmament, a messenger whose language is motion. No one knows yet what it will reveal, its composition, its age, its purpose, but none of that matters now. What matters is the flicker, the moment when the ordinary sky became extraordinary. You feel the echo of that moment long after you leave the observatory. Even in sleep, your thoughts drift upward, tracing that line of light again and again. You realize that this first flicker was not an ending, but a beginning. Something has entered your awareness, something vast, indifferent, and beautiful. The universe, in all its silence, has brushed against your imagination, and in that brief contact you feel both small and infinite at once. The comet moves on and the night exhales its stars again. Tomorrow the search will continue, for meaning, for motion, for a pattern written in the void. But tonight you rest with the image still glowing in your mind, that thin, unforgettable streak across the dark. You close your eyes, still hearing the whisper of telescopes, still sensing the shimmer of something just beyond knowing. Somewhere out there a traveller drifts, silent, distant, waiting to be understood. And as you drift towards sleep, you find yourself wondering what kind of world could have given birth to it, and what else might still be wandering toward you. You wake to a pale morning, though your mind still lingers among stars. The memory of that streak, that impossible line of light, glows softly behind your eyes. News has spread overnight. 3I/ATLAS, an interstellar traveller. The words feel unreal. Interstellar. You whisper it aloud and it hums through the room like a prayer. It means this thing is not ours. It means it was born somewhere else, under a sky we will never see. Astronomers gather again, surrounded by screens and data streams. They adjust coordinates, refine measurements, trace the curve of its orbit backward through time. Each new calculation stretches the imagination further. The path does not lead to the outer reaches of our solar system, nor to the Oort cloud's frozen sentinels. It points beyond, far beyond, into the uncharted shimps between stars. The realization is simple but staggering. This comet was born in another sun's light. You imagine it there, in a nursery of gas and dust around a distant star. Long ago, before our world had oceans or breath, that star flared and flickered in its youth. Around it spun countless fragments, rock, ice and fire, dancing to gravity's patient rhythm. From those fragments, one small body formed, part ice, part dust, part dream. For ages, it circled its parent star, bathed in a warmth now lost to history. And then, some chance, a collision, a gravitational nudge, a chaotic encounter, flung it outward. It broke free from home and began a journey without end. In your mind, you follow it through that exile. The comet drifts for millions, perhaps billions of years. It passes stars being born, others dying, and others fading into quiet embers. It crosses regions where the density of dust thins until there is almost nothing, only scattered particles and forgotten photons. Through it all, it remains unchanged, its heart frozen, its silence intact. Time, vast and slow, folds around it like a blanket. You think about that kind of solitude. To travel so far, to wander so long without a sun, what does that mean for something that cannot think, cannot feel? And yet something in its endurance speaks to you. It carries the memory of every star whose light brushed against it. Every passing glow has left an echo in its frozen layers. Each molecule of ice is a fossil of another time, another place. If you could hold a piece of it in your hand, you would be holding a story written before Earth began. Telescopes continue to track its path. Scientists discuss its velocity, nearly unimaginable speeds, fast enough to escape any star's pull, even our own. 3I/ATLAS will visit, then vanish forever into the deep. You find yourself torn between wonder and sorrow. To meet such a traveller only once feels like catching a snowflake before it melts. Brief, brilliant, impossible to hold. Yet perhaps that is what makes the meeting sacred. As images sharpen, the comet begins to reveal itself. Its coma, still faint, shimmers faintly against the black. The light is sunlight, our sun's warmth awakening ancient ice. Each beam that strikes it is like a first greeting, a handshake between two systems. The ice, untouched for eons, begins to sublimate, turning to vapour, releasing whispers of hydrogen and carbon, elements of life carried across interstellar distances. You can almost imagine the comet sighing as it warms, as if remembering what light feels like. Scientists talk about composition, albedo, molecular bonds. You hear their words but feel their emotion beneath them, the quiet reverence of people aware they are touching something eternal. Every reading is a relic, every number, a verse in the poetry of the cosmos. 3I/ATLAS is no longer just an object, it is evidence. Proof that the galaxy's borders are illusions, that matter, like thought, drifts freely through the endless night. You think of the star it once knew, somewhere perhaps that star still burns, or perhaps it has already died, collapsing into silence. The comet would not know, carries the memory of that light even after the source is gone. In that way, it is like you. You too carry light that has faded, memories of voices, faces, moments that no longer exist except within you. Both of you are archives of vanished suns. The more the scientists learn, the more questions arise. How many others wander unseen between the stars? Could there be countless travellers, passing unnoticed through the void, bearing the chemistry of creation from system to system? You imagine space as a great ocean, and these comets as bottles cast adrift, each carrying a fragment of a story, a sample of home. Perhaps this is how the universe communicates, not through words, but through exchange, through motion. One world sends a messenger, another world listens. Evening falls again, and you step outside. The air is cool, the stars sharp and bright. Somewhere among them, 3I/ATLAS glides silently, invisible to your eyes but not to your awareness. You feel a kinship with it, a shared motion, a shared origin in stardust. You are both children of suns, born of the same cosmic dust, carried forward by forces beyond choosing. A thin crescent moon hangs low on the horizon. You watch it and think of the comet's slow spin, its ancient journey continuing through time's long river. It has crossed the distances your species can barely imagine. It has seen galaxies shift, clouds collapse, light stretch thinner and colder. and now, for a heartbeat of eternity, it brushes close enough for you to notice. The universe does not often pause, but tonight it feels as though it has. You breathe in the quiet, feeling the presence of something vast and indifferent, yet beautiful in its constancy. This traveller was not meant for you, yet it has passed your way. Its visit reminds you that all things, even those separated by light years, share the same cosmic ancestry. Somewhere deep within your bones, in the carbon, the calcium, the iron, that you feel that lineage. You are made of the same matter that once formed around alien suns. As you stand beneath the stars, you realize that every bit of you and every bit of the comet was once part of a supernova's aftermath, the residue of creation scattered across the galaxy. You are both fragments of the same universal story, momentarily aware of each other. The thought is almost too vast to hold, but you let it settle softly within you. The comet will continue on its path, and you will continue on yours. Two drifters born of light crossing briefly, both destined for journeys without end. And as the night deepens, you find yourself wondering, if this traveller was born beyond suns, what other stories might lie hidden in the dark between them, waiting for their first touch of light? Night returns, and with it the familiar hum of the telescope. You sit once more among screens and graphs, surrounded by quiet figures who no longer need words to share their wonder. The comet's position has been refined, its orbit traced with delicate precision. The data arcs across digital space, a perfect curve, yet a strange one. You can feel it in the shape. It does not loop or circle. It passes through. Its path is an open wound through the solar system, a line that enters from infinity and leaves toward infinity again. Astronomers call it a hyperbolic trajectory. You whisper the word to yourself, hyperbolic, and it feels like poetry disguised as math, a shape that never closes, never returns, never ends. You imagine it drawn not in ink, but in the gentle gravity of stars, a map written in motion. The comet's speed, its angle, its restless momentum, all of it tells a story older than human language. You realize that every orbit, every spin, every fall through space is a sentence in the universe's endless book. The more you study the data, the more elegant it becomes. The comet doesn't wander aimlessly. It follows a rule, the same law that binds planets to their suns and moons to their planets. Gravity writes with invisible hands, curving the paths of worlds the way a musician shapes melody. What looks like chaos is harmony you cannot yet hear. The line that seemed wild now becomes a phrase, and you are learning to read it. You think of Newton, centuries ago, watching an apple fall and sensing that the same force that pulled it downward could also bind the moon to Earth. And later, Einstein, bending the straight lines of space itself, showing that motion is only another kind of geometry. Between them lies every movement of every object that ever drifted through the dark. Tonight, that lineage continues through you, tracing the path of a comet from another star. The numbers scroll down the screen. Perihelion, the point where it will come closest to the sun. Inclination, steep, dramatic, like a dive through unfamiliar skies. Speed, enormous, nearly defiant. You try to picture it, a pale traveller carving its way through a vast gravitational field, the sun tugging, the planets curving space around it. Yet nothing can capture it completely. To imagine its path is to imagine dance without sound, art without colour, beauty beyond scale. Somewhere in the data you notice small deviations, minor fluctuations, whispers of influence, Jupiter's pull perhaps, or Saturn's faint tug. Even the giants cannot hold it, only shape its passage for a moment before it slips free again. The comet obeys, but only for a breath. You think about how motion itself is a kind of freedom, bound by law yet always moving forward. You close your eyes and see it tracing its grand arc, crossing orbits, gliding above the ecliptic plane, untouched by the slow clockwork of planets. To Earth, its passage will last weeks, maybe months. To the comet, this is a blink in eternity. It has travelled longer than our species has existed. Its map was written before our first ancestors looked up at the night. You feel humbled, but not small. To understand such motion is to feel included in something vast and orderly, a choreography that holds everything, even your heartbeat, in quiet rhythm. The astronomers begin to overlay its orbit with others, 1 I/Oumuamua, 2 I/Borisov, now 3 I/Atlas joins them. Each one different, yet together they draw a pattern, a web of lines crossing the sun from every direction. The sky becomes a geometry of meetings, brief luminous intersections of cosmic travelers. You imagine these paths as threads in a cosmic tapestry, weaving through the fabric of the Milky Way. Each orbit, each pass, adds another stroke of motion to a painting so large no eye could ever see it whole. It makes you think of your own life, how every action, every decision, every journey leaves a trace. From far enough away, perhaps your path too would form a curve through time and circumstance, guided by invisible forces you do not always understand, the comet's motion, your own choices. Both obey laws that are gentle and universal. Even chaos, you realize, is just order, written in a language you have not yet learned. The observatory quiets as the night deepens. Someone dims the lights, and the screens glow softly against the dark. You watch the simulation replay, the comet entering from the edge of the solar system, sweeping close to the sun, and then curving outward again, never to return. The motion is smooth, serene, inevitable. It feels less like a fall and more like a passage, as if the comet were following a route it has always known. You imagine space not as emptiness, but as texture, a sea of curves and slopes shaped by gravity's hand. Every massive body distorts the space around it, creating valleys and ridges that guide travelers unseen. The comet surfs these invisible waves, following a route sculpted by ancient stars and long-forgotten collisions. It does not know where it goes, it only moves as it must. But in its motion lies wisdom, the wisdom of surrender to natural law. A thought comes quietly. Perhaps everything moves this way, not with purpose, but with harmony. Rivers find their way to the sea, light bends around matter, and hearts find their rhythm in gravity's echo. The universe is not causal pretending to be order. It is order pretending to be chaos so that we may learn to see it. You feel the room fade away. For a moment, you are out there with it, drifting beyond Saturn's orbit, tracing the long arc through the dark. You feel no fear, only calm. The stars do not rush. Time does not hurry. The path you follow has already been written, yet each moment feels new. That paradox, that blend of determinism and wonder, fills you with a strange peace. When you open your eyes again, the simulation has ended. The comet's line fades into black, the curve dissolving into nothingness. But you know the real one is still out there, moving with perfect silence. The map it writes will never fade. It will continue beyond the heliopause, beyond the reach of the sun's wind, into the cold clarity of interstellar space. You imagine future beings far away and far ahead, tracing its path as you trace it now, and recognizing in its curve the same law, the same beauty. Motion becomes memory, gravity becomes language. The comet's journey is the universe's handwriting, a message carved into nothingness that says, I am movement, and I am meaning. As you leave the observatory, the wind carries the scent of cold metal and thin air. Above you, the stars shine like punctuation in a sentence too vast to finish. You think of the comet still drawing its elegant line through the dark, and you find yourself wondering, if its path can be read like a story, what hidden message might lie between its movements, waiting for you to hear? You sit in the quiet dark, watching screens glow faintly into the control room. Numbers scroll like rain. Lines rise and fall across the monitors. Silent signatures of invisible things. Outside, the desert stretches endless under the night sky, a place so still that the hum of electricity feels like breath. The great radio dishes turn slowly, obedient to distant coordinates, their metal faces listening for whispers too soft for human ears. At first, there is only static, the eternal sound of everything and nothing. It fills the speakers like wind across a barren plain. But then, beneath it, a pulse appears, faint, regular. The technicians lean forward, unsure if they even heard it. You watch as their fingers hover over the controls, uncertain between disbelief and wonder. It comes again, a rhythm that should not exist. Beep, silence, beep, silence. Interference? Someone whispers. Maybe, but the sky above this station is protected by law. No cell signals, no Wi-Fi, no broadcasts. The silence here is almost sacred. Every sound from above is either the sun, the stars, or something passing between them. The scientists adjust their filters, subtracting noise, recalibrating frequencies. The pulse remains. It doesn't strengthen, doesn't fade. It simply exists, repeating in the same pattern, as if waiting to be noticed. You feel it deep inside your chest, syncing for a moment with your own heartbeat. It feels alive, though you know that feeling is a human invention. You imagine the signal's path and crossing light years, bending through gravity, slipping between dust clouds, finally brushing against a thin thread of metal on Earth. Perhaps it was never meant for us, perhaps it is nothing at all. But you still listen, as though the act of listening itself matters more than the answer. One of the researchers begins to trace the pattern on paper. The lines look like music, like an unfinished score left by something ancient. You think of pulsars, neutron stars spinning fast enough to blur time. They too create pulses, natural, beautiful, mathematical. But this one feels different, slower, almost intentional, as though it carries memory instead of motion. Hours pass, the signal holds, the night outside deepens. You step away from all the screens and walk out to the observation deck. The sky is a bowl of crystal silence, full of stars that shimmer like data points in a cosmic graph. You breathe in the dry air and wonder how many of those stars are sending out their own forgotten signals, stories written in frequency and decay. Inside, the team debates possibilities, a reflection from Earth's upper atmosphere, a new kind of solar echo, maybe even an asteroid emitting charged particles as it tumbles. Each explanation feels plausible, yet none erase the quiet thrill that hums through the room. Science demands patience, wonder demands surrender. You stand between the two, someone plays back the signal on the speakers. It fills the room and soft, deliberate, almost heartbeat-like. You feel the space around you transform. It's not music, not speech, not chaos. It's something between. It doesn't ask to be understood, it asks to be witnessed. You realize that most of the universe speaks that way, in patterns that don't translate, in rhythms that only evoke. As dawn nears, the pulse weakens. The rotation of the Earth shifts the dish away from its invisible source. The signal fades until it becomes part of the static again, indistinguishable from everything else. For a moment, everyone is silent. Then a quiet sigh ripples through the room, not disappointment, but reverence. They have touched something immense, even if just for a second. You look again at the data, at the fading peaks that once stood like heartbeats against the noise. You feel something change in you, not belief, not proof, but awareness. The sky is no longer empty. It never was. Later, as you walk through the awakening desert, the signal still echoes in your mind. Beep, silence, beep, silence. A rhythm older than words. You realize how fragile perception is, how easily humans find meaning in patterns, and how that very act defines them. The universe might not be sending a message, yet you are always ready to listen. You pause to watch the sun rise. Light spills across the horizon, scattering through air and dust, the same physics that guides signals through the void. Maybe that is the true pulse, the heartbeat of energy itself, endless and patient, waiting to be recognized. You close your eyes and hear it again, softer this time, from somewhere within rather than without. It is not a message from beyond, it is the sound of your own curiosity reflected back by the cosmos. And as the day begins, the pulse dissolves into silence once more, a silence that feels less like absence and more like the pause before the next question. You picture the comet not as a wanderer, but as an archive, a frozen page from a story written before Earth learned to breathe. Deep within its core, sunlight has never touched. There the ice sleeps, crystalline and cold, older than oceans, older than memory itself. The molecules cling to one another in patterns that hold the fingerprints of creation. When astronomers describe it, they speak in quiet awe. They talk about isotopes, ratios, volatile compounds. But when you imagine it, you see something more delicate, an ancient whisper preserved in frost. The comet's heart, composed of hydrogen and carbon, carries the chemistry of beginnings. Each atom is a letter in the language of the universe, arranged long before eyes existed to read it. You think of how the comet formed. back when the solar system was only a cloud of dust and dreams. Within that swirling nebula, fragments collided, fused, froze. Temperatures dropped so low that even sunlight seemed to slow. Water vapor condensed into grains of ice, trapping bits of methane and ammonia, tiny capsules of information that would drift for billions of years before ever meeting light again. Now, as 3a/A TLAS travels near the warmth of the sun, that ancient ice begins to awaken. The heat touches its surface like memory returning after deep sleep. Molecules evaporate, releasing gas and dust that stretch into a glowing tail. What escapes into space is not merely vapor, it is history exhaled. The comet tells its story not through sound, but through chemistry and light. You imagine standing close enough to feel the faint stream of escaping particles. They brush against your imagination like snowflakes of hydrogen and carbon, each one older than any mountain or ocean on Earth. Some of that material may even be older than the sun itself, matter forged in the death throes of ancient stars, carried through time to this moment. Every puff of gas is a page turning in the cosmic diary. Scientists read it carefully, the ratios of deuterium to hydrogen, the presence of rare carbon chains, the traces of oxygen frozen since before there were planets to breathe it. They look for clues, for signs that comets like this once seeded young worlds with water and organic matter, planting the chemistry of life where nothing yet stirred. And as you listen to their findings, you realize that the ice remembers not just its own birth, but the possibility of yours. The same hydrogen that streams from its surface may once have formed part of your body's water. The same carbon may live in your breath. You and the comet share ancestry written in atoms. You are made of the same forgotten snowfall. There's something humbling in that thought. You stand beneath the stars, and it feels less like looking up and more like looking inward. You sense the continuum, the quiet handoff of existence from one form to another. The comet in melting fulfills its purpose, to give back what it carried for eons. Nothing is truly lost, only transformed. The scientists call this outgassing. You call it remembering. As the ice sublimates into space, you imagine it whispering in vapor trails. I was here when stars were born. I was here when none of you existed. I carried light through darkness so you could one day see yourselves. Perhaps the message isn't meant to be decoded. Perhaps it's meant to be felt, a soft reminder that even the simplest substances hold stories longer than civilizations. You realize that meaning doesn't always require intent. Sometimes the universe speaks through persistence alone, through what endures against time. The comet's surface now glows faintly, its tail stretching millions of kilometers. Telescopes capture the spectacle, converting photons into data, data into understanding. Yet, beyond all the numbers, the truth remains profoundly simple. Frozen molecules from before Earth's dawn are now shining across your sky. The ancient is revealing itself molecule by molecule, breath by breath. You wonder if somewhere in that icy chemistry lies the secret of life's spark, not as an answer, but as a resonance. Life, after all, is another kind of remembering, the universe learning to recognize itself. Perhaps that is the real continuity between comet and human. Both preserve, both evolve, both reflect light in their own way. Night falls on your imagination. You see the comet against a field of stars, its tail a luminous echo of its past. You think of how fragile it is, how easily it will fade, yet how eternal its story remains. The ice will vanish, but the memory of its presence will linger in minds, in sensors, in data, and in the quiet awe that stirs whenever humans look up. And as the comet continues its journey, the last traces of vapor drift away into the endless black, a slow, glimmering sigh. What remains behind is the understanding that every frozen particle, every ancient atom, holds within it a remembrance of light. You close your eyes and breathe slowly, feeling the kinship of chemistry and thought. Somewhere out there, the comet keeps moving, dissolving, remembering, whispering, and you wonder, softly, what else the universe has chosen to keep. You sit in the dim glow of the observatory again, surrounded by the quiet pulse of machinery. The night is steady, clear, endless. On the screens before you, the signal dances across graphs, A rise, a fall, a rise again. It feels almost intentional, as though something out there understands repetition. The scientists lean closer, eyes reflecting the faint light of infinity, as if trying to read the mind of the cosmos. The pulse you first heard hasn't vanished. It returns at intervals, slipping through layers of static like a memory refusing to fade. At first, you expect chaos, but what you see is rhythm. Not perfect, not mechanical, organic, even gentle. You remember how nature has always loved symmetry, the spiral of a shell, the pattern of galaxies, the double helix hidden within your blood. Could this signal be another echo of that same universal handwriting? They begin to map it out, columns of data stretching into time. The wave rises, peaks, falls, then repeats. Ratios emerge, mathematical relationships whispered in the margins. It is not random, at least not fully. One scientist murmurs about harmonics, another about phase drift, another about probability. But under all the talk of numbers lies something more human, a quiet reverence for structure. The pattern feels alive, like breath traced in code. You imagine how the signal might sound if transformed into music, a slow, patient rhythm like a drumbeat beneath the stars. It wouldn't be melody, it would be pulse, resonance, the kind that fills the chest rather than the ears. You think about how humans have always looked for order in noise. From campfires to laboratories, the same instinct persists, to listen for meaning in what the world hums. One researcher overlays the data onto another signal, a solar flare, a pulsar, a deep space echo. The similarities are partial, the difference is beautiful. Whatever this is, it exists in the space between known and unknown. You feel the tension of that place not as fear but as awe. The infinite is not frightening, it is patient. It allows you to look as long as you dare. Hours pass. The signal continues unwavering. Someone jokes that maybe it's just the cosmos breathing. Everyone smiles, because deep down they want to believe that could be true. Breathing is rhythm. Rhythm is life. And perhaps life, in its simplest form, is the universe keeping time with itself. Your mind drifts beyond the room, past the atmosphere, into the silence where this pattern began. You imagine waves of radio energy crossing light years, undisturbed, like ripples in an endless pond. Each crest and trough carries the memory of its origin, a motion that began somewhere, sometime for reasons you may never know. You realize that meaning doesn't have to be given, it can be found. On the chalkboard behind the computers, someone sketches a rough curve, an imitation of the signal's rise and fall. The line looks like a mountain range or a heartbeat, depending on how you see it. Perception shapes truth. You wonder how many discoveries have begun this way, not through certainty, but through curiosity that refused to collapse under doubt. The team discusses models. They simulate possibilities, rotation of a magnetic object, periodic emission from charged particles, reflected waves from solar winds. Each theory explains part, but not all. The signal remains an elegant riddle. You think of how science thrives not on answers, but on persistence. Wonder is not a doorway, it is a dwelling. When fatigue sets in, you step outside. The air feels vast, electric with quiet. The Milky Way arches overhead, a lattice of light drawn across darkness. Every star seems to pulse faintly, as if joining the same rhythm. You close your eyes and let that image linger. A universe full of synchronized possibility. Back inside, the data continues to flow. A graduate student overlays the comet's trajectory with the signal's recurrence. The alignment is not perfect, but close enough to stir a collective hush. Could it be that the pulse follows the comet's motion? That its rhythm mirrors the orbit of this ancient traveller? Coincidence, maybe, or a deeper resonance between motion and memory. You think of pendulums, tides, breathing, all cycles repeating themselves across scales of existence. Nothing in nature is truly still, even atoms vibrate, even silence hums. The signal in that sense belongs to everything. It is not the voice of an alien or a star, but of motion itself, the rhythm of being. A scientist records a note in the log, "Pattern stable, possible harmonic drift observed." The words look simple, but they hold galaxies of meaning. To observe a pattern in the infinite is to glimpse structure in the chaos. To know, even for a moment, that the universe allows coherence. It's enough to make the heart steady, to make the mind quiet. You stay long after the others leave. The monitors still glow, soft and green. The signal hums faintly through the speakers. Rise, fall, the sound of time measured in patience. You realize that this is what discovery feels like. Not triumph, but stillness. The knowledge that something beyond comprehension has chosen to reveal only enough to keep you wondering. Outside, dawn begins to stretch across the horizon. You watch the light scatter, turning darkness into pattern once more. The world itself joins the rhythm. Waves on air, colour on sky, breath on silence. And as the sun climbs, you understand that patterns are the language of continuity. Everything that exists seeks a rhythm to belong to. The signal fades as daylight floods the observatory, yet its impression remains, imprinted in your thoughts like the echo of a heartbeat after running. You sense that this pattern will return, maybe not tonight, maybe not ever, but the universe has shown its symmetry once. That is enough. You walk away slowly, feeling that the infinite has just exhaled, a long, patient sigh that promises there is more to come. Light, it has always been our first teacher. Long before mathematics, before telescopes, before the names of stars were whispered by human tongues, there was light, spilling across oceans, glinting off eyes, painting knowledge across the surface of awareness. Every discovery we've ever made begins there, a photon travelling an impossible distance to meet a mind ready to notice it. You imagine one of those photons now, one born in the farthest edges of space, perhaps in a star long dead. For millions of years it has wandered, untouched, through the dark corridors of the universe. It dodges dust, bends through gravity, dances between atoms, until at last it finds itself reflected by a telescope's mirror. In that instant, its journey ends, and ours begins. Inside the observatory, you stand before that mirror, a piece of glass so finely curved it can catch the smallest flicker of the cosmos. The photon that began its voyage before humans even existed now becomes a data point, a pixel, a shimmer of meaning. You think about how miraculous that is, an ancient traveller turned into human understanding. The scientists speak softly as they work, adjusting coordinates, checking focus. They call it calibration, but you sense something spiritual in the act. Each adjustment brings the image into sharper being, from blur to clarity, from chaos to form. It feels like the universe is slowly choosing to reveal itself, pixel by patient pixel. Outside, night presses close. The air on the mountain is thin, alive with cold. You can feel the quiet hum of machinery, the heartbeat of discovery itself. The telescope turns, tracking the comet, its massive frame moving with impossible grace. Above, the stars burn with the kind of patience that humans can only envy. You look up and see what the telescope sees, the faint smear of 3I/ATLAS against the dark. It's not bright, not majestic, just a trace of light among billions. Yet it's enough. Light does not need grandeur to be meaningful. It only needs to arrive. In the control room, the image sharpens. On the screens, you see the comet's coma glowing faintly blue, its tail stretching across emptiness. But beneath that image lies the true wonder. Each pixel a story of interaction, a photon that has touched both Comet and Earth. Through that meeting, meaning is born. You recall how early astronomers once mistook comets for omens. Fire in the sky meant change, disaster, or revelation. They didn't have equations, they had imagination. And in a way, that was another form of light, the kind that shines inward. Even now, with all our instruments, we are still guided by both. The light that reaches our eyes, and the light that stirs in our thoughts. A scientist next to you whispers about wavelengths. He points to subtle differences in colour, the spectral fingerprint of the comet's ice and dust. In those shades, chemistry reveals itself. Hydrogen sings in deep red, oxygen hums in blue, carbon murmurs somewhere in between. The universe does not speak in words, but in wavelengths, and each one is a syllable of its endless poem. You think about that, how light, a thing with no voice, can teach us to listen. Each beam carries stories older than Earth itself, stories written not in sound, but in vibration. Light travels through darkness not to be seen, but to be heard by the instruments that understand its quiet rhythm. And you, standing there, are part of that instrument, one more receiver in the cosmic circuit of awareness. The light that enters your eyes does not vanish. It becomes thought, reflection, meaning. You realize that humans are the universe learning to notice itself. Every observation, every discovery, every gentle what if is the cosmos folding back to examine its own reflection. The comet drifts across the screen, and someone remarks on its brightness curve, the way it flares and fades as it spins. There is a pattern there too, written in photons. Some call it data, others call it beauty. You decide it's both. Science and wonder, it turns out, are just two directions of the same beam. Hours pass. The telescope keeps tracking. Outside, the wind howls like a distant tide. The sky, vast and ancient, looks almost alive, a sea of energy flowing in every direction. You imagine all the photons travelling right and now, unseen and unnoticed. From distant quasars, from dying suns, from galaxies too far to name, their journeys overlap, collide, scatter. And yet here on this tiny planet, some of them find a purpose. They become discovery. They become light transformed into language. You think of how fragile that process is. How much depends on a single photon making it through dust, distance, and chance. How easily it could have missed Earth entirely, but it didn't. It came here, to this mirror, to this moment, to you. Light is generous like that. It does not choose who sees it. It shines because shining is its nature. And perhaps that is what 3i/TLAS is teaching us, that messages don't always need intention to be meaningful. Sometimes meaning is born simply by being seen. The night fades toward morning. The stars begin to dim as sunlight creeps across the horizon, washing the observatory in pale gold. The telescope shuts its eye for the day, resting after hours of patient listening. You linger for a moment longer, knowing that every photon that touched its mirror will now ripple outward through minds, through ideas, through wonder. As you leave, you glance once more at the fading stars. Their light will still be reaching you tomorrow, and the day after, and long after you are gone. That's what light does. It remembers everything it touches. And somewhere beyond that dawn, in the dark where the comet still drifts, new light begins its journey, another lesson waiting to arrive. You picture Earth at night, half in shadow, half bathed in reflected sunlight. From space it glows like a breathing ember, wrapped in the soft blues and whites of air and water. Yet beneath that quiet shimmer, countless ears listen. Across deserts, on mountain tops, and in the emptiest plains, great metal dishes tilt toward the sky. They are not just machines. They are instruments of patience tuned to the frequencies of wonder. Each one listens not for words but for whispers, for patterns too delicate for the human ear. The universe does not speak in syllables. It speaks in wavelengths, in pulses, in harmonies of radiation that cross billions of years before they ever touch us. You imagine the silence between each pulse as a kind of breath, a rhythm too slow to measure, too vast to capture. At first, the signals are indistinguishable from noise. Static hums like wind through leaves. Cosmic rays crackle against the receivers, leaving bright scars on digital maps. Yet within that noise, scientists find meaning. Patterns of repetition, spectral fingerprints of hydrogen and helium, echoes of galaxies that lived and died long before Earth cooled. You begin to realize that listening to the universe is not about hearing something new. It is about learning to recognize what has always been there. The telescopes wait through storms and stillness alike. Some are so large they could swallow cathedrals. Others are humble, lonely dishes in forgotten corners of the world, watched only by a night shift caretakers and the occasional fox. Yet all are part of the same network, a planet-wide chorus trying to catch a note from the heavens. They hum softly in unison, synchronizing their clocks to the heartbeat of the cosmos. You picture one antenna standing in the Atacama Desert, a place so dry that time itself seems preserved in the sand. At night, its dish glows under a sky of sharp stars, every grain of dust a silent witness. The wind carries whispers that sound almost like language, and the machinery responds by turning, adjusting, following something invisible. You can almost feel the moment when data becomes emotion, when numbers begin to resemble meaning. Inside the control rooms, light from monitors paints faces blue and white. Scientists sip lukewarm coffee, their eyes tracing signals across screens that look like soft snowfall. They know most of what they capture is ordinary, background radiation, emissions from quasars' solar flares, but still, they listen. Because one day, amid the static, something unexpected might sing back. And if it does, humanity must already be listening to hear it. You lean into that thought, how listening is an act of faith. The world hums with so much noise, engines, conversations, waves, machines. Yet above all that, we build devices to listen to silence itself. You realize that we are not just searching for other civilizations, we are searching for proof that our curiosity matters, that it echoes into something larger than ourselves. The Earth itself becomes part of the experiment. Its rotation turns each antenna into a moving ear, sweeping across the galactic plane, tracing invisible arcs through space. Every sunrise resets the direction of our attention. Every nightfall restores our ability to wonder. You think of the planet as a giant receiver, its surface vibrating faintly with cosmic background radiation, its magnetic field whispering to solar wind, its oceans responding to lunar tides. The whole Earth listens, even when we do not. Sometimes you imagine you could hear what it hears. Not the static, not the noise, but the layered symphony of it all. The sigh of ancient starlight, the distant crackle of a pulsar turning like a cosmic metronome, the faint murmur of the Milky Way's spiral arms, grinding against the void. Together they form a music too vast to ever end, and you are one small note within it. You remember the first time humans pointed radio telescopes toward the heavens decades ago. The signals they received were faint and strange, repeating, ordered, alive with rhythm. For a moment, the scientists thought they might be hearing something intelligent. They even named the first signal LGM1, Little Green Men. It turned out to be a pulsar, a spinning neutron star broadcasting a beam of energy like a lighthouse in space. But even that revelation did not disappoint them. The universe itself was speaking, just in a different dialect than expected. Now the instruments are far more sensitive. They can detect the faintest murmurs from galaxies billions of light years away. They can measure the heartbeat of the universe itself, the microwave afterglow left from its earliest moment, still humming like a lullaby through space and time. When you think about it, the Earth has been listening since before we existed. We merely learned how to translate its listening into data. In the end, you understand, listening changes the listener. The more we tune in, the quieter we become inside. The more we learn, the more we sense how much we don't yet understand. Each signal, even the false ones, teaches humility. Each empty frequency reminds us that silence too is communication. It tells us that space is not void, but potential. Waiting for attention, waiting for awe, you feel the pull of that truth deep in your chistos. The same curiosity that builds antennas also beats in your heart. You too are a listener, a creature tuned to frequencies of wonder. You listen when you look at the night sky, when you hear rainfall, when you pause between words. The universe does not require translation. It only requires presence. To listen is to belong. As dawn breaks over the observatories, the scientists log their final readings for the night. The sky fades from indigo to gold and the dishes turn slowly toward rest. Somewhere beyond sight, the Comet 3I Slasher TLAS drifts closer, crossing the space between stars with silent intent. Perhaps it too has been listening. To sunlight, to gravity, to the quiet pull of meaning. And for a fleeting moment, you imagine that all of it, Earth, the antennas, the comet, you, are part of one continuous circuit. A loop of awareness connecting matter to motion, silence to sound. The listening never ends, only changes form. The monitors dim, the data stores. The desert grows still again. Yet the memory of listening lingers, like the afterglow of sound once the music stops. You realize now that eavesdropping on the universe is not intrusion. It is communion. You close your eyes and hear it, the hum beneath everything, the faint eternal vibration that reminds you the cosmos is not mute, but musical. And somewhere beyond the curve of Earth's horizon, the comet begins to exhale, a breath of light that will soon reach us, like an answer carried on solar wind. You watch as 3I/ATLAS glides into the realm of warmth. Until now, it has been a body of silence, a frozen traveller of interstellar dark. carrying the cold memory of other suns. But as it nears our star, that silence begins to breathe. The first touch of sunlight stirs its surface, and a shimmer of vapor escapes. It is the comet's awakening, a moment when frozen stillness becomes motion, when the void learns to exhale. You imagine that moment not as a violent eruption, but as a sigh, slow, inevitable, ancient. For billions of years, this ice has known only darkness. Now photons strike it for the first time, unlocking what was trapped inside: water, carbon dioxide, dust, and secrets. The gases bloom outward, forming a delicate sphere, a coma, luminous and alive, glowing faintly green and blue. It is not solid, not defined, but it feels alive, like breath caught in sunlight. Around the comet's nucleus, tiny grains of dust drift outward. Each one catches the sun's light and scatters it, turning emptiness into glow. The coma expands with grace, a living aura stretching thousands of kilometers, yet so light that a human could pass through it without feeling a touch. In the coma's faint luminescence, you see the story of transformation, how stillness, when warmed by attention, becomes expression. Scientists on Earth watch through telescopes as the comet's coma brightens. To them, these emissions are data, spectra of carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, the fingerprints of chemistry written in light. But to you it feels more like language, the comet's first whisper, carried on solar wind. Perhaps every molecule escaping its surface is a syllable, a message in the only tongue it knows, the physics of release. The sun, of course, plays its part. Its radiation presses outward, shaping the coma into a tail, two in fact. One made of dust, soft and curved, glowing golden. The other, made of ionized gas, points straight away from the sun in electric blue. Together they trail behind the comet like thoughts left in air. You imagine those tails as streams of memory, each particle a piece of elsewhere drifting into our system. The solar wind becomes the messenger, carrying fragments of what the comet once was into the deep. Closer now, the surface of 3I/A TLAS fractures. Jets of vapor burst from cracks, spinning it slightly with each release. It tumbles slowly, almost like a dance. The pattern of its spin changes the direction of its outflow, creating spirals of dust that ripple through the coma. Astronomers call them jets and fans, but you think of them as breath patterns, cosmic exhalations written across vacuum. Every puff a heartbeat, every twist a gesture of intent, and then you wonder, does the comet feel this transformation? Does it sense its own unraveling, or is it merely obeying the laws of heat and light? In the stillness between those questions, you realize that life and physics often mirror each other. To breathe is to lose part of yourself into the world, to give what you were to something greater. The comet is not dying. It is communicating through decay. You imagine standing near it, far from any planet, surrounded by the faint haze of its coma. You would see the sunlight scatter in pale blue arcs, particles drifting like snow that never falls. It would smell of dust and frost and nothingness. You'd reach out, and the motes would glide past your hand, ignoring the idea of touch. You'd feel no wind, yet everything would move, a paradox of presence without pressure. You would realize that breath in the vacuum of space is not sound but shimmer. Meanwhile, from observatories across Earth, data pours in, wavelengths converted into lines, brightness curves into equations. Astronomers can now predict its sublimation rate, the pressure of gas escaping from its core, the probable lifetime of its coma. Yet none of those numbers capture the feeling of it, this delicate act of release, this fleeting existence built entirely on transformation. The comet is here only because it is dissolving. Some of its gases form chains, complex molecules, organic precursors that might once have seeded worlds like ours. It's humbling to know that what escapes the comet now could someday drift into another system, land on another planet, and spark something living. The exhale of one body becomes the breath of another. You feel a quiet respect for the way the universe reuses its moments. The closer 3I/TLAS moves toward the sun, the brighter it becomes. For a brief time it could even be visible to the naked eye, a streak of color across the night, a reminder that movement itself can glow. But this brilliance comes at a cost. Heat intensifies, pressure builds, the comet's surface fractures further, losing mass each second. The same warmth that wakes it also undoes it. You think about that duality, how creation and destruction are intertwined. The comet's beauty exists only because it is vanishing. The coma, the tail, the radiance, all of it is borrowed from its own disappearance. And perhaps that is the message you've been trying to hear since it entered our solar system. To exist is to release, to shine is to let go. For a while you simply watch, you imagine you can hear the faintest hum, not a sound but a vibration of awareness. A feeling that the comet knows it is seen. In that knowing there is connection. Light leaves its surface and travels across space, into lenses, into retinas, into thought. Somewhere between the comet's exhale and your perception, meaning is born. The coma continues to grow, diffusing until it blurs into the sunlight. It will not last long, just a few weeks before the sun's heat strips it away, but its particles will persist, scattering through space, joining the solar wind's eternal drift. You picture those grains moving outward, crossing the orbits of planets, perhaps one day brushing against the atmosphere of Earth. When they burn as meteors, they will appear as brief streaks of light, tiny reminders that every breath leaves a trace. The comet continues its curve around the sun, glowing fiercely before beginning its long escape. Its coma fades, but the idea of it remains. You think of the way humans too are shaped by warmth and distance, how we expand, release, and leave behind trails of memory. Perhaps that is what 3I/TLAS teaches. That exhalation is not loss, but continuity. As it moves beyond the reach of our instruments, the last of its gas drifts into sunlight, scattering like dust into gold. For a moment, you imagine that the solar wind carries its whisper, not a message of language, but of being. A gentle confirmation that to breathe even once is enough to alter the universe. You breathe with it, matching its rhythm, a slow inhale, a slower release. And as the last traces of the comet's glow dissolve into the dark, you realize that perhaps the message was never in the signal, never in the silence, but in the act of exhaling itself, a cosmic sigh that says, "I was here." The data continues to stream in. Scientists prepare to decode it. Somewhere, amid the faint noise, a new kind of silence begins, one that asks not what was said, but what remains when the speaking stops. You sit in the dim light of a control room surrounded by soft hums and quiet breathing. Screens glow with lines of data, the language of the cosmos translated into numbers and noise. The scientists around you murmur in restrained excitement, eyes fixed on a pattern that seems almost intentional, yet maddeningly incomplete. It's the pulse again, faint, irregular, like a whisper that drifts through static and refuses to stay still. For days, they've compared it to everything they know, the timing of pulsars, the radiation signatures of solar flares, the mechanical interference from satellites and Earth-based signals. Each possibility is tested, mapped, eliminated. What remains isn't proof of communication, but the echo of something that resists explanation. You feel a strange respect for that resistance, as if the universe itself prefers mystery over clarity. Silence fills the space between each data burst, not empty, but dense, full of waiting. You begin to hear it differently. The longer you listen, the more you realize silence is never truly silent. Instruments hum, air vibrates, your pulse syncs with the rhythm of unseen waves. Somewhere within that stillness, meaning could hide. You think of a pause in conversation, not the end of thought, but its gathering. Perhaps the cosmos too is gathering something before speaking again. The scientists analyze frequency bands, searching for structure. They shift the signal into sound, hoping the human ear might catch a pattern no algorithm could. The speakers crackle, soft, uneven tones, a rising hum, a faint drop, a slow repeat. It's not music, but it feels musical. The room holds its breath. Someone whispers, "It sounds alive." You don't answer because you feel it too, not intelligence perhaps, but intention. You close your eyes. In that darkness, the sound becomes an image, waves folding into each other, like ripples on a still pond disturbed by something unseen. The noise becomes texture, like fabric stretched across time. Each thread is connected to another, yet no one can see the full weave. You imagine this might be how the universe speaks, not in words, but in tensions, vibrations, alignments. There's something comforting about that. To think that even Pythons is structured, that behind randomness, there could be rhythm too fine for perception. You recall how, when light passes through a slit, it reveals hidden interference patterns. Maybe sound does the same. Maybe silence is simply interference we haven't learned to measure yet. The lead astronomer leans back, exhausted but glowing with thought. "We may never know what it means," she says softly, "but we know it's real." You feel those words like a pulse through your chest. We know it's real. It's strange how much truth can fit inside uncertainty. Later, when the team disperses, you stay behind. The room hums with machines that never sleep. You watch the monitors alone, feeling the data scroll like rainfall. Each number represents a moment of attention, a second spent listening to the sky. You think of the people who built these instruments, who calibrated dishes across continents, who aimed them upward not because they expected an answer, but because listening felt right. You begin to understand that science too has its rituals. The way the team waits before conclusions, the way they repeat observations, the way they respect the unknown. It's not so different from prayer. Both are forms of listening. Both require silence. Both seek connection with something beyond comprehension. A graph updates. The signal shifts slightly, not in strength but in timing. It moves as if breathing. You wonder if that motion is real or illusion, but the thought brings warmth. The data no longer feels like data. It feels like conversation. Your mind drifts back to the comet, to the exhale of its gases, the soft tail streaming behind it like thought made visible. What if this signal's the same? Not language, but exhalation. The comet's breath made into radio form, a pattern born of heat and distance and time. Nature doesn't always separate meaning from motion. Sometimes they're one and the same. You imagine yourself standing on a quiet hillside, the world asleep below, and overhead the sky alive with invisible conversations. Radio waves from dying stars, microwaves from the dawn of creation, the faint hum of cosmic background radiation, all of it pouring through you, unceasing. You can't hear it, but it's there, touching the molecules of your body, slipping through your thoughts. You're constantly immersed in cosmic language. You just don't yet know the alphabet. Perhaps the signal from 3i/ATLAS isn't an anomaly, but a reminder that silence itself is communicative. Every gap in understanding is an invitation to look deeper, to ask again. The scientists are trying to decode something that might not want decoding. You realize that sometimes the point is not translation but attention. Listening itself changes the listener. The universe doesn't owe explanations. It gives experiences, flashes of coherence that fade when grasped too tightly. You think of all the signals humanity has sent into the void, radio greetings, mathematical sequences, even songs. What if our messages too are being received as noise? What if another civilization is also decoding silence, wondering if we meant to say something or simply exist? You look again at the graphs, rising, falling, repeating. You can almost sense a rhythm beneath it. Maybe not deliberate, but beautiful. It reminds you of heartbeat monitors, of tides, of the gentle inhale and exhale of life itself. Maybe that's the truth hidden here, that life and silence are intertwined, that to breathe, to rest, to pause, all are forms of communication. Outside, night deepens. The observatory dome opens slightly, revealing a slice of stars. They shimmer like waiting eyes. You imagine each one listening, each one sending its own silent rhythm outward, filling space with presence. You think of Earth from afar, another bright pulse among billions, broadcasting quietly without meaning to. You wonder if someday someone will interpret our silence, if they will hear our oceans, our traffic, our laughter carried by faint electromagnetic waves. Maybe they'll listen to us the way we now listen to 3i/ATLAS. Curious, uncertain, reverent. The room grows quieter still, the hum of machine fades into your own breathing. You realize that in a way, you've been decoding silence your entire life, in pauses between words, in the moments before understanding dawns, in the spaces where awe takes shape. Silence, when heard deeply enough, becomes language. The last data packet of the night finishes transmitting. The signal weakens, but you keep listening anyway, because now you know the absence of sound is not the end of listening, it's the beginning of awareness. You lean closer to the console, eyes half closed, and whisper, not to be heard, but to feel the weight of your own voice in the quiet. "I hear you," you say softly. No reply comes, none is needed. The silence has already answered, and as dawn begins to spill across the desert, you sense that this quiet holds a direction, a path toward the next discovery, toward the next kind of message waiting to be found in motion, in pattern, in breath. The silence fades, but not before leaving a question, gentle, unresolved, echoing inside you like a memory you can't quite name. Everything moves. The comet, the planets, the stars, even the atoms within your skin. Stillness, you realize, is only an illusion created by the scale of time. Motion is the universe's first language, older than light, older than sound. Before there were words, there were orbits. Before there was communication, there was gravity. 3I/ATLAS does not speak, yet it tells a story with every turn of its nucleus. It spins, shedding fragments like punctuation marks in a sentence too vast to comprehend. Its path bends around nothing, unclaimed by any sun. That motion, unbound, deliberate, mathematical, becomes a code. Every flicker in brightness is data. Every rotation a syllable. Every spark of reflected sunlight a signal written in the syntax of physics. Astronomers measure this dance with equations, not poetry, but you can feel how they overlap. The spin rate changes slightly, an irregular rhythm that might seem random, yet follows the laws of torque and sublimation. Each molecule of ice leaving its surface shifts its balance, the same way a thought can change the course of a life. It is a message, but not meant to be read. It is meant to be witnessed. Somewhere deep in that motion lies meaning. The comet doesn't decide to communicate, it simply exists, and existence itself becomes expression. You wonder if all movement in the universe carries this kind of silent intention. Maybe even the trembling of your heartbeat adds a syllable to the cosmic story. You move, therefore you belong to the conversation. Data flows in from observatories around the world, telescopes in Hawaii, Chile, Spain, and orbiting satellites, all tracing the same point of light. Their instruments translate brightness into numbers, numbers into graphs, graphs into insight. Patterns emerge, the light curve flickers like Morse code, though no one expects it to spell a message. Yet the human mind is wired for pattern, to find meaning where there might be none, and beauty where there is no intention. You think of how ancient civilizations once watched comets and saw omens, messengers of gods, bearers of fate. Now, with radio dishes and spectrometers, we see molecules, dust tails, energy signatures. But perhaps both ways of seeing are part of the same yearning, to decode the movements of the heavens into language. Whether written in superstition or science, the impulse is the same, to read the universe as if it were trying to say something. Every orbit is a sentence fragment in the story of motion. Electrons circle their nuclei. Moons orbit planets. Planets orbit stars. Stars orbit galactic centers. Even galaxies drift and twist through the cosmic web. And through all this movement, energy transfers, a continual flow of cause and effect like ideas being passed between generations of matter. 3I/ATLAS, being interstellar, does not belong to this solar family. It carries information from another system, coded not in letters but in its chemistry, its shape, its velocity. Its dust might hold isotopes unseen in our neighborhood, telling of stars that died long before the sun was born. To study its movement is to read history, not written on paper, but carved into trajectory. You recall how physicists describe everything with motion. Temperature is motion, time is motion, sound is motion, life itself is sustained motion. When something stops moving completely, it ceases to exist as we know it. Death, perhaps, is only the stilling of motion, and even then, decay is just another kind of movement. In this universe, stillness is impossible. As you watch data unfold on the screen, you begin to sense that motion and meaning are inseparable. Every falling leaf, every orbiting comet, every drifting photon carries a trace of order. Chaos is only motion we haven't learned to interpret yet. The comet doesn't send signals, but it is a signal, the physical embodiment of continuity, crossing the distances that separate systems and stories. Scientists debate how much of the comet's rotation is natural versus influenced by past encounters. Did another star's wind push it long ago? Did it pass through debris that scarred its surface, altering its spin? Every scar is part of its grammar, every mark a piece of memory. You imagine yourself as another moving particle, orbiting within your own sphere of meaning, Earth's rotation beneath your feet, your lungs rising and falling in rhythm with the planet's atmosphere. You two are in constant motion even when you feel still, your blood flows, your atoms vibrate, your mind moves between thoughts. Perhaps you, like 3I/ATLAS, are a message in motion. For a moment, you close your eyes and let the hum of data fade into silence. You picture the comet continuing its journey. No audience, no translation, just pure trajectory. It moves because it must, and that necessity is beautiful. There is honesty in motion that words can never capture. You recall Newton's laws, how motion persists unless acted upon. The comet will continue forever unless something changes it. Maybe that's how the meaning works too. Ideas travel until they collide with something capable of understanding them. The universe is not silent. It is waiting for listeners tuned to its frequency. Every civilization that ever existed has watched the sky move. From the slow arc of the Milky Way to the flashing of meteors, humanity has measured time by motion. Sundials, pendulums, atomic vibrations, all are attempts to capture what never stops. You realize then that the language of motion is also the language of time. To move is to experience, to measure movement is to become aware. And perhaps awareness itself is the ultimate message, the universe learning to notice its own motion through us. You open your eyes, the comet's path is still there, scrolling gently across the screen. Its coordinates update by fractions of a second, a steady rhythm of numbers. Each one could be seen as a heartbeat, a distant pulse echoing through centuries of travel. You sense that even without a mouth or a mind, the comet has spoken, not in words, but in persistence. Motion becomes understanding. Understanding becomes gratitude. You whisper to the screen, to no one in particular, "I see you more, you're moving," and for the first time you feel as if something unseen might be saying it back. Darkness is not absence. It is a presence all its own, quiet, steady and vast. Between every star lies more darkness than light, and yet that darkness holds everything together. You realize that what you see in the night sky is not just illumination, but the pattern of shadows in between. The universe speaks not only in brightness, but in the pauses between. 3I/ATLAS moves through this darkness like a thought passing through silence. Its light grows fainter now, swallowed slowly by the endless black. The telescopes still trace it, but more often they lose it, their sensors overwhelmed by the emptiness surrounding it. You watch graphs flatten, signals dissolve. What remains is not the comet, but the space it once brightened. You wonder whether the spaces between signals are part of the message. Every pulse of light needs the dark interval that separates it from the next. Every heartbeat depends on the quiet between beats. Even language needs silence, the pause between words where meaning gathers. Without those gaps, there would be no rhythm, no pattern, no chance for comprehension. Maybe the universe too needs silence to speak. Astronomers call it background noise, the faint hiss of radiation left over from the birth of the cosmos. But if you listen closely, that noise is not empty. It carries history, the afterglow of creation stretched thin by time. The shadow between stars is not void. It is memory. Every dark patch of sky is filled with ancient light too faint for the eye, still moving, still telling stories we haven't learned to hear. The comet's image on your monitor flickers, then vanishes. It is not gone, only hidden by distance and time. You feel a strange calm. Its silence becomes a kind of companionship. You remember that stars shine for billions of years, but spend most of their existence surrounded by nothing. Yet without that nothing, their light would have nowhere to go. You begin to think differently about absence. Maybe what you cannot see is as essential as what you can. The atoms in your body were once part of something burning, but the spaces between them, the emptiness, make your body possible. Every structure depends on what is not there. The universe too depends on its own gaps. In that way, darkness is not the opposite of light. It is the frame that makes light visible. The comet, faint now, becomes more meaningful precisely because it fades. You start to understand why the astronomers sit in silence for hours. They are not waiting for signals alone, they are learning to listen to the spaces between. Outside, the night stretches infinite and still. You step away from the monitors and look up. The Milky Way spills across the horizon, countless stars stitched into a single ribbon. But what captures you is not their brightness. It's the black ocean surrounding them. There's something sacred in that silence, as if the cosmos itself breathes through stillness. You think of the ancient nights on Earth, before electricity and satellites, when people saw only the raw sky. To them, the dark was divine, a vast, unknowable presence filled with gods, dreams, and fears. Today, science names it differently. Dark energy, dark matter, invisible forces shaping galaxies. Yet the awe remains the same. We are still looking into the same silence, asking the same questions. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the cosmos doesn't just send messages in bursts of light, but also in the patient waiting between them. The pause teaches as much as the signal. The absence allows understanding to unfold. The shadow between stars is not nothing. It is invitation, a space left open for meaning to enter. You think of 3I/ATLAS again, drifting farther away. Its light no longer reaches you directly, yet its path continues unseen. The data may stop, but the story doesn't. Somewhere beyond sight, the comet keeps writing, its invisible trajectory carving new patterns into the dark. You feel comfort in that, knowing the story continues even when you can't watch. Perhaps the greatest truths are learned in what we can't measure. Silence allows perception to deepen. Stillness teaches attention. Darkness, for all its mystery, is the one constant that holds the universe together. You realize that even your own thoughts move through spaces of quiet, the mental pauses between ideas. Without them, there would be no clarity, only noise. You close your eyes. The darkness behind your eyelids mirrors the cosmos. You sense faint vibrations, your breath, your heartbeat, the hum of machines in the lab. Even these small sounds have their own shadows, the silent gaps that make rhythm possible. You begin to listen differently. You no longer wait for light. You listen for absence and find it speaking back. In that stillness, you feel connected to everything, the stars, the comet, the unseen space between. You understand that the universe does not only reveal itself in brilliance, but in restraint. It speaks through what it withholds. The shadow between stars is not an end. It is the quiet interval before the next revelation. You begin to understand that every act of looking outward is also an act of looking inward. The telescope's glass, polished and curved, does not merely capture light. It reflects the shape of the human question behind it. When you peer through it, you are not just seeing the comet, you are seeing yourself, refracted through distance, curiosity, and wonder. 3I/ATLAS glows faintly at the edge of visibility, a wandering ember against the deep night. Its light touches the lenses, then the sensors, then the minds waiting behind the data. Somewhere between its photons and your thoughts, a mirror forms, not of metal or glass, but of meaning. The universe sends back what you give it. Curiosity becomes discovery, awe becomes understanding. You imagine the astronomers hunched over their screens. They measure trajectories, plot graphs, compare wavelengths. Yet beneath the math, something tender moves, a quiet yearning to belong in the story they study. Every calculation, every late-night observation is a way of asking, who are we in all this vastness? The comet does not answer in words. It answers by continuing to exist, by simply being there for you to find. The reflection becomes clearer the longer you watch. The more precisely scientists describe the comet's behavior, its spin, its composition, its orbit, the more it reveals about the observers themselves. The precision mirrors the discipline of human thought. The patience mirrors our persistence. The comet's indifference mirrors our longing for connection. Nature reflects not what we want to see, but who we are while looking. You think about the first humans who lifted stones and polished them into lenses. They didn't yet know about comets or galaxies or the fabric of space-time. They only knew that they wanted to see further. That impulse, to look beyond, to extend vision into mystery, is the truest reflection of what it means to be alive. Even now, with telescopes spanning mountains and orbiting the planet, we are still guided by that same primal curiosity. In that sense, the cosmos has always been a mirror of human emotion. Its vastness mirrors our loneliness. Its order mirrors our logic. Its beauty mirrors our imagination. When we send probes into space, we are not just exploring the unknown, we are mapping the contours of our own desire to understand. The more we uncover, the more we see ourselves reflected in the starlight. You remember an image from a satellite camera, a pale blue dot suspended in endless dark. Earth, fragile, luminous, ordinary. That image, like a mirror held to the cosmos, changed how we saw ourselves. It made our boundaries invisible, our conflicts small, our unity undeniable. The comet, too, performs this function. It reminds you that perspective is everything. Seen from afar, even the noisiest planet becomes a whisper of colour and motion. You begin to realise that maybe we search for cosmic messages, not because we expect an answer, but because we need to believe we're worth talking to. The yearning itself becomes the signal, a transmission of human consciousness, sent through mathematics, language, and light. Every discovery says, in its own way, we are here and we are listening. The comet's quiet passage becomes the universe's way of listening back. And what if that's enough? What if communication doesn't require words at all, but resonance, a shared motion between sender and receiver? The comet moves, we observe, we interpret, it reflects. The dialogue continues in silence across impossible distances. You start to see that discovery is not about receiving meaning from the universe, but co-creating it. Every observation completes a sentence that nature began. The idea fills you with calm. You no longer feel small beneath the stars. Instead, you feel perfectly sized for the role you play. One conscious fragment of a vast and curious mirror. The universe reflects your awareness, and your awareness reflects it back. Neither dominates, both exist in harmony, light bouncing endlessly between the two. You think of light itself, how it behaves as both wave and particle, reflection and motion. Perhaps consciousness behaves the same way, part observer, part participant, oscillating between knowing and being known. When you look at the comet, you collapse possibilities into perception. When you turn away, it expands again into infinite potential. The act of seeing becomes creation. You are part of the mirror's surface, shaping what it reflects. Outside, the night deepens, the observatory hums softly. You step to the window and gaze upward. No instruments this time, only eyes. The sky returns your stare with quiet understanding. The same light that touched 3I/ATLAS millions of kilometers away now enters your pupils. It has travelled across emptiness to meet you here, to become memory in your brain, warmth in your awareness. The message is not encoded in frequency or amplitude. It is written in that meeting. You smile. Maybe the comet's journey is not meant to deliver a message at all. Maybe its arrival, its visibility, is the message. Proof that even in the cold, indifferent machinery of space, beauty still finds a way to reach consciousness. You and the comet are participants in the same reflection, both temporary, both luminous, both seeking to be seen. In that realization, the distinction between observer and observed dissolves. You no longer stand apart from the cosmos. You stand within it, a mirror among mirrors. Your gaze joins the great conversation of light, an ancient dialogue that began long before you and will continue long after. You close your eyes, and the afterimage of starlight lingers. Within it, you see not a comet, but yourself, small, brilliant, and briefly aware. The mirror holds you, then lets you go as gently as the universe always does. Everything that exists speaks in the language of energy. It's not a language made of words, but of motion, vibrations, photons, magnetic fields, and heat. Every atom hums softly to itself. Every beam of light carries a meaning in its frequency. When you study the comet, you begin to realize that it has been speaking all along, and the universe has been fluent since before you were born. The photons leaving 3I/ATLAS are ancient travelers. They leap from sunlit ice, scatter through gas, and race through the vacuum at light speed, each one a messenger carrying news of temperature, direction, and time. When they strike a telescope mirror, they slow for just a fraction of a second, long enough to be translated into voltage, then data, then thought. That transformation from light to perception is how the cosmos and consciousness meet. The message is not just what is sent, but what is received. You trace that process in your mind. A photon that left the comet seconds ago might now be a pixel on a monitor, a number in a spreadsheet, a spark in someone's imagination. The same energy that once drifted through empty space now triggers a neuron in a human brain. It doesn't vanish, it evolves. It changes form just as everything does. In this transformation, you sense the quiet elegance of a rule older than words. Energy never dies. It only moves from one kind of being to another. You look at the scientists around you, tired eyes, quiet hands, data reflected in their glasses. They are translators of this language. Every graph, every image, every calibration is an act of listening. They take the raw voice of the universe and turn it into understanding. You realize that even when they disagree or fail, they are still part of the same dialogue. Energy flowing from star to comet to human thought. Knowledge itself is a form of motion, and you are part of that circuit. The photons entering your eyes become electricity in your body, impulses down your nerves, memories in your cortex. You are powered by sunlight that was once filtered through atmosphere, captured by leaves, turned into food, and transformed again into life. The language of energy is not distant or abstract. It is the vocabulary of your very being. Every heartbeat is an echo of the same rhythm that drives the cosmos. You wonder if the comet knows this in its own way. It does not think, but it acts. It reflects, absorbs, releases. When the sun warms its surface, it responds by exhaling gas and dust, a silent reply to light. You imagine that exhale as a sentence, brief, delicate, yet full of meaning. Perhaps this is how the universe converses, with reactions instead of words, with balance instead of grammar. Every cause becomes an effect, every action a response. The dialogue never ends. You think of the instruments that measure radiation, spectrometers, detectors, antennas. They are like extensions of human senses, capable of hearing whispers far beyond sound. They convert energy into patterns that you can read, comprehend, and feel. But beyond the technology lies something older. Intuition, the sense that meaning can be found in motion, that life itself is a conversation between forces. Energy is the shared alphabet of everything that has ever existed. You picture a single photon leaving the sun 8 minutes ago. It traveled through space, brushed past planets, then struck the icy surface of 3I/A TLAS. There it scattered, a part of it bouncing toward Earth, another absorbed, another lost to the void. The one that reached you became a number in a dataset, then an image on a screen, then a spark of recognition. That photon's journey was the translation of existence itself. In its path lies the story of connection. Everything touches everything else, even across the emptiness. The comet's glow, when seen through this understanding, becomes more than beauty. It becomes a living diagram of transformation. Energy from the sun becomes vapor. Vapor becomes light. Light becomes thought. And thought too radiates outward. The human mind emits its own energy, not in beams of visible light, but in choices, creations, and acts of curiosity. When you think of the comet, you give it new life, new context. Your attention is another wavelength in the universal spectrum. You consider what happens when energy fades, when the comet moves away from the sun, when its glow diminishes, when silence returns. Nothing is truly lost. The photons continue on, the data remains stored, the awareness persists in the minds of those who saw it. Energy doesn't stop, it simply changes who carries it. The message keeps traveling, just in different forms. You realize then that maybe the true message of 3I/ATLAS isn't hidden in radio signals or pulses. Maybe the message is the transfer itself, the endless passing of energy from one state to another, across time and space until it becomes you. In a way, you are reading the comet's story written across the particles that now warm your skin, fire your neurons, and move your heart. You're not outside the conversation, you are its continuation. The idea humbles you. It also comforts you. Every human fear, of silence, of death, of being forgotten, begins to fade when seen through this lens. Nothing truly ends, it only transforms. The energy that animates you today once belonged to stars, to oceans, to other lives. Someday it will belong to something else again. And that continuity is the purest form of message, existence declaring that it cannot be undone. Outside the observatory, night spreads across the desert. The air hums faintly with static from distant storms. The dishes turn their metal faces toward the sky, listening. Somewhere above, 3I/a TLAS drifts on, shedding light like thought. You imagine the photons streaming down, touching machines, mountains, oceans, people. Each touch is a word. Each reflection is a reply. The earth glows faintly in return, radiating warmth, sending its own verse into the cosmic language. And then you understand the communication has already happened. It happens every moment. Energy changes hands, from atom to atom, from star to mind. The message has always been motion, the only universal word every being can understand. In that movement, meaning is constant, eternal, alive. You breathe in and feel the warmth of your own energy radiate outward. The comet continues its journey. The sun burns, the universe listens, the conversation goes on, fluent, infinite, and beautifully without translation. Night in the observatory feels different from any other night. The air carries a quiet purpose, a tension that is not worry but wonder stretched thin. You sit among scientists who have stopped trying to talk over the silence. The hum of equipment replaces speech. Fingers tap keys softly. Screens glow faintly. And outside the sky expands, vast, patient, unbothered by the speed of human thought. They call it a vigil, though no one prays aloud. The act of watching, of waiting for meaning to appear in data, is its own devotion. You feel it in their posture, the stillness born not of fatigue, but of reverence. A comet moves through the instrument's gaze, and though its light is faint, every photon it gives is received as sacred. The data scrolls like rain across screens. Each line of numbers a drop, transient and luminous, before vanishing into logs and graphs. Some scientists squint, some adjust frequencies, others sip cold coffee in silence. It's not about discovery tonight. It's about continuity, the discipline of listening, and refusing to turn away even when nothing answers back. Patience becomes a kind of belief. You glance at one researcher, her eyes half lit by a monitor, reflecting a spectrum of distant light. She's been here for 16 hours, chasing a signal that might not exist. Yet there's something holy in that pursuit. It reminds you of monks tracing patterns in sand, knowing the wind will erase them. The beauty is not in the permanence of the result, but in the persistence of the act. Outside, wind sweeps across the desert floor. It moves around the antennas like invisible water. Somewhere far above, 3I/ATLAS continues its glide. Its coma thins, its voice weakens, but the telescopes still turn toward it, mechanical heads raised like seekers waiting for revelation. The universe offers no promises, and yet they keep looking. That too is communication, the willingness to ask without demand. You imagine how many nights like this have come before, nights when astronomers waited for something new, something that changed how humanity saw itself. The first time radio waves mapped Jupiter's storms, the first pulsar discovered by a graduate student who thought her equipment was malfunctioning, the first whisper of cosmic microwave background, once dismissed as noise. Discovery often hides inside monotony, disguised as repetition. The universe rewards those who can endure its silence long enough to hear its rare words. The scientists around you know this. They don't rush. They know that meaning arrives slowly, like dawn over the horizon, imperceptible at first, then all at once. You begin to understand their patience not as stillness, but as motion at its gentlest speed. Their vigil is not passive. It is participation in the rhythm of the cosmos. Time drifts. Midnight passes into something deeper. Some step outside for air, their breaths turning white under the stars. You follow, standing beneath the sky's cold brilliance. The observatory dome looms behind you, a mechanical moon that never sleeps. From this height, the city lights below look like constellations of another kind, human ones, flickering with their own patterns of hope. You close your eyes and listen. The wind, the machines, the faint buzz of electricity, it all blends into a single, low-frequency hum. You realize this is what the universe sounds like when it breathes through us. Each vibration is a reminder that even stillness has tone, that even silence carries rhythm. It's as if the cosmos plays a note too deep for ordinary hearing, and these scientists have spent their lives learning to perceive it. Back inside, someone finds something, a blip, a shift in the data. Heads lift, conversations spark softly, almost reverently. Is it real? Is it interference? For a moment, the room feels alive with anticipation, the pulse of collective attention. They run checks, calibrate, verify. The blip steadies, then it fades. Just noise, perhaps. But even that brief rise in hope feels like part of the ritual. The vigil continues. You notice how none of them seem disappointed. The point was never certainty. It was communion. To watch, to record, to care enough to try. Science in this quiet form feels indistinguishable from faith. Both seek meaning in the unknown, both require humility before something larger than comprehension. A researcher beside you murmurs, "It's still out there." You nod, though you're not sure whether she means the comet, the signal, or truth itself. Maybe all three. The phrase hangs in the air like incense, not an answer, but an offering. The room grows quieter again. You feel time stretching, bending gently, as though the hours themselves are observing. Each second becomes deliberate, each breath synchronized with the turning of the telescope. You begin to see what they see, that watching is a creative act. It builds connection where none existed before. To watch the universe is to make it personal. Somewhere beyond all this technology, 3/ATLAS continues on its indifferent path. It does not know it is being studied. It does not send or withhold messages. And yet, because humans have chosen to listen, it has become something more than ice and dust. It has become a bridge between wonder and understanding, a reminder that attention transforms the world it touches. You think of the phrase, "the sky is silent," but it isn't. Silence is full of frequencies too faint for ordinary senses. The scientist's vigil is an act of expanding hearing, of attuning to subtler voices, and in doing so they remind you that listening is not waiting for an answer. It is giving something of yourself to the question. Hours later, dawn begins its quiet invasion. The first pale light spills over the horizon. Monitors reflect its hue, blue mingling with gold. The researchers blink, stretch, exchange small smiles. They've gathered nothing conclusive tonight, yet the data is recorded, the story extended, the conversation continued. You realize that discovery isn't always a sudden revelation. Sometimes it's the willingness to remain awake when others have gone to sleep. You step outside one last time. The sky is lightening and the stars fade one by one. The observatory's dome turns slowly, graceful even in exhaustion. Somewhere beyond that brightening sky, the comet keeps traveling unseen but not forgotten. You feel a quiet warmth, not from the sun, but from the understanding that vigilance itself is a form of light. And as morning rises, you sense that what comes next is not another question, but a possibility, a whisper that meaning may live even in randomness. You begin to wonder if anything in the universe is ever truly random. The question feels too large to fit inside your head, but it refuses to leave. Every image of 3/ATLAS, every dataset, every glowing streak of light on a sensor suggests order. Patterns inside patterns. Yet science teaches that randomness governs motion, decay, and creation. You ask yourself, can randomness itself hold purpose? The comet doesn't answer, but it doesn't have to. Its orbit, too wild to belong to our solar system, follows equations we can still describe. It came from somewhere beyond the edge of human reach, moving on a path determined by gravity alone, or maybe not alone. You imagine the forces that pushed it, the countless collisions, the gravitational nudges across millennia. Perhaps what we call randomness is simply complexity too great for us to see clearly. Astronomers call it a hyperbolic trajectory, a curve that means it will never return. To them, it's a passing object. To you, it feels like a visitor with intent. But is intent a quality of the comet, or of your own mind interpreting its motion? Humans look for meaning even in noise. You realize that your curiosity itself might be the evidence of a deeper kind of order. In the observation room, the scientists speak in numbers. They debate the comet's composition, its brightness, its rotational axis. None of them mention meaning. Yet behind every equation is a question that begins with why. Why this path? Why now? Why such precision in the dance of chance? Even in silence, those questions hang in the air, unspoken but alive. You look at the data scrolling across the screen, brightness curves, chemical readings, magnetic variations. The numbers form waves, rising and falling with a rhythm that feels deliberate. You remind yourself that the human brain is designed to see patterns. It's what allowed our ancestors to predict seasons, track stars, and survive. But it's also what leads us to believe in omens and signs. Maybe both are forms of understanding. Maybe belief and analysis are just two sides of one survival instinct. You think of all the times people look to the sky for guidance. Comets once meant doom or change, then they became puzzles, then scientific specimens. Now, 3I/ATLAS becomes something else again, a mirror for human thought. You're not sure if the comet means anything, but you're certain that it does something. It triggers reflection. It reminds humanity of its need to question. That too might be purpose. A scientist nearby adjusts the focus on the display. The comet's nucleus appears sharp, almost sculpted. You imagine it carrying ancient dust, molecules older than Earth, fragments of frozen gas that remember the birth of stars. Inside those atoms lies chemistry that could one day become life. The idea sends a quiet shiver through you. If life can emerge from the same ingredients, could purpose also emerge from the same patterns? You begin tracing the comet's journey backward in your mind. Millions of years through interstellar cold, past invisible gravitational hands that shaped its direction. Maybe purpose doesn't require consciousness. Maybe it simply means that something continues to move, to change, to participate in the universe's story. A comet traveling through emptiness could still fulfill a function, even if that function is only to be seen by you. Outside, the night sky is clear. The telescope dome opens with a mechanical sigh. You step out for air. The stars above don't flicker here. The atmosphere is thin and still. You think of all the forces that keep them burning: fusion, balance, decay, gravity. Each follows rules, yet within those rules lies creativity. Stars make elements, comets carry them, planets form from their dust. Maybe purpose doesn't require intention. Maybe it's built into the fabric of existence. The thought comforts you. You remember how often humans struggle to find reason in tragedy or meaning in coincidence. We demand that events justify themselves. But maybe the justification is simpler. Things happen because they can. The universe explores its own possibilities. 3I/ATLAS is not here for anyone. And yet its passing changes everyone who sees it. Its purpose is not intrinsic, it's relational. It exists in the connection between object and observer. Inside again, one of the astronomers shows you a time-lapse of the comet's movement. Over days, its light curves and fades. Tiny jets of gas push it, altering its spin. It's not a stable thing, it's evolving, responding. You think about how humans too adjust course with every encounter. Purpose might not be a destination. It might be the act of responding, adapting, continuing learning. Later that night, when the lab quiets, you sit alone by the console. The hum of equipment fills the air. You scroll through images of the comet one more time. Each frame is a message of persistence. Dust erodes, ice melts, yet motion continues. If survival itself is purpose, then the comet fulfills it beautifully. You consider how science defines purpose differently. Biology calls it function. Physics calls it tendency or equilibrium. Philosophy calls it teleology. But perhaps, across all languages, the core is the same. Things move towards states that sustain their existence or expand their influence. In that sense, even a comet has purpose. Its motion carries matter, energy, and story from one region of space to another. You write in your notes, maybe purpose is the continuity of consequence. The words surprise you. You hadn't planned to write them, yet they feel right. Every action, every orbit, every fragment of dust continues something. The comet's passing will leave traces, microscopic grains entering the solar system, becoming part of planetary dust. maybe someday falling to Earth. A rock burning in the atmosphere could be the final echo of this visitor's purpose. You realize that humans too operate under that principle. We leave traces, memories, inventions, signals. We might not know therefore, but they continue beyond us. Perhaps the measure of purpose isn't how much control we have, but how far our influence travels after we're gone. The night grows colder. You glance at the monitor showing the comet's trajectory. Its distance increases every hour, yet the data keeps coming, faint, steady, faithful. You think of it as a messenger, though you know it's not. Still, every message needs a receiver, and here you are. Maybe that's the real exchange. The universe sends motion, consciousness interprets it. Between them, purpose arises. Before leaving the observatory, you take one last look through the eyepiece. The comet appears smaller now, dimmer but no less real. You whisper a thought you don't intend to say aloud. Thank you for passing this way. The words feel absurd and sincere at once. The comet doesn't hear, of course, but the act of saying it matters. It affirms the connection between wonder and meaning. You step outside again. The night wind touches your face. Somewhere behind you, instruments keep recording. Somewhere ahead, the comet continues its infinite path. You imagine its dust trailing through space, scattering fragments that might someday form something new. You think, maybe that's all purpose ever is. The continuation of motion, the passing of influence, the unbroken chain of becoming. You turn toward the horizon, where dawn is a faint promise. The stars fade slowly, but their patterns remain in your mind. Random or not, they guide you home. The idea begins quietly, as a question. Should we reply? It's a thought that travels through the observatory like a low current, unspoken yet shared. If 3I/A TLAS is a messenger, what kind of message would we send back? And more importantly, to whom? The comet is already moving beyond reach, its tail fading into the black. To send a signal now would be like shouting into a storm long after the thunder has passed. Still, the question lingers. Humans are not built to remain silent in the face of mystery. Every discovery eventually becomes an invitation to speak, to share, to answer. Across history, whenever we found something that looked beyond us, we tried to respond. We painted caves, built monuments, launched probes. Perhaps sending a reply to the comet would simply be the next expression of that same instinct. One of the scientists jokes about it first, half serious, half tired. What if we send a message in light? The others smile. The idea is absurd, but so were most things before they were done. We've already transmitted radio waves toward distant stars. We've sent spacecraft carrying plaques and records that describe who we are. Why not one more gesture, a signal of gratitude, or curiosity, or acknowledgement? You imagine what such a message would be. Words wouldn't work. No one out there reads English or Mandarin or mathematics the way we do. Sound wouldn't travel. The only language the universe seems to understand is motion and energy. Maybe our reply would have to be written in light, a series of pulses directed outward, encoding not words but rhythm. The cosmos listens in timing, not vocabulary. Someone suggests a symbolic transmission, a sequence based on the comet's own rotation, mirrored back through a radio telescope. If the comet's pattern is a kind of cosmic heartbeat, perhaps sending it back would say, "We heard you." The simplicity of it feels beautiful, not an attempt to dominate the conversation, just to participate, to be present in the dialogue of existence. But as quickly as the idea grows, doubt follows. Who are we replying to? The comet is not alive, not aware. It doesn't seek acknowledgement. Maybe the reply is only for us, a way to recognize that we've been moved by its passing. Like writing a letter you'll never send, because the act of writing matters more than the delivery. You think about other messages humanity has sent into the dark. Voyager's golden record carries greetings in dozens of languages, the sound of a mother's kiss, the heartbeat of a human being. Pioneer's plaque shows the outline of a man and woman, the map of our star. All those artifacts drift silently, their senders long gone, their destinations unknown, yet their purpose remains pure, to say, "We were here and we were listening." Maybe that's all a reply needs to be, an expression of awareness. The universe gave us curiosity, and in return, we offer consciousness. 3I/ATLAS pass through our system, without noticing. But it changed something in us. It reminded us that existence is not local. It stretched our attention beyond the solar system's comfort, made us look outward again. In the quiet hours after midnight, you sit at the console. The comet's signal is now faint, barely distinguishable from background noise. Still, the telescope listens. You imagine the faint photons leaving its surface, particles of reflected sunlight, scattered dust, fragments of story. Some of those photons will hit sensors on Earth, others will drift for billions of years, reaching no one. Yet all of them continue, carrying with them the possibility of being seen. That, you think, is their reply. You recall how civilizations once looked for omens in the sky, believing that comets brought warnings or blessings. Science has since replaced superstition, but the emotional residue remains. We no longer fear the heavens, but we still search them for meaning. Sending a message now would not be worship. It would be wonder, formalized and transmitted. A quiet thank you in the language of technology. The lead astronomer shakes her head when someone brings it up again. We don't answer comets, she says. We study them. Her tone isn't dismissive, just factual. She's right, of course, but the difference between study and conversation might be smaller than we think. Every observation is also a form of engagement. To look deeply at something is to admit that it matters. You think about the paradox of communication. To be heard, something must first listen. Perhaps the universe is not silent, but responsive in ways we can't yet recognize. Our own planet hums with signals, radio waves, satellites, transmissions. Somewhere perhaps another world listens and wonders what Earth is trying to say. Maybe our every broadcast, every telescope ping, every beam of data is already part of a larger conversation we can't yet perceive. Would a deliberate reply change that? Or would it simply make us aware that we're already speaking? The distinction blurs the longer you think about it. The act of observation, after all, alters the observed. Physics teaches that principle. Philosophy just gives it meaning. Maybe the comet's purpose was to make us aware of our own voice. As dawn begins to lighten the observatory windows, the conversation fades. No signal is sent. No code of light or pattern of sound leaves Earth that morning. Yet you feel as though something has been transmitted nonetheless, through thought, through reflection, through awareness shared among a few quiet humans watching the sky. The reply exists, even if it's silent. You step outside, blinking at the cold air. The horizon glows faint pink. Above it, the comet is invisible now, swallowed by distance. You imagine it continuing its journey, carrying with it no message and every message at once. Somewhere behind you, Earth turns, sending radio waves into the void, carrying songs, static, laughter, wars, greetings. Each one stretches outward like a strand of light, a record of a civilization that looked up and wondered. Perhaps that is the reply we never needed to send, because it's already happening. Every broadcast, every pulse of communication, every moment of human curiosity radiates outward. The universe is already hearing from us, even if we don't know it. Our existence is the transmission. You realize then that silence is also part of the conversation. To remain quiet, to listen without response, can be an act of respect. Maybe the proper reply to a cosmic messenger is not to speak, but to understand. Reverence doesn't always require noise. You look once more toward the sky and whisper, "We heard you." The words vanish in the wind, but the thought remains. The reply has been made, not through instruments or light, but through comprehension itself. The comet drifts away, slow and certain, like a thought leaving consciousness. Its light softens until it becomes indistinguishable from the background of stars. For weeks, telescopes track its faint signature, a speck of motion against infinity, until even the most sensitive instruments lose it to darkness. What remains is data, silence, and memory. Yet you feel its presence still, like a word unspoken but understood. As the images fade from observatory screens, scientists mark the last coordinates and lean back in their chairs. There's no celebration, just the quiet realization that something extraordinary has passed. Space does not pause for farewells, it simply continues. The comet does too, gliding through the unseen corridors between suns. carrying fragments of its icy story into places we will never go. You imagine what that journey must look like. No light, no sound, just endless black punctuated by distant brilliance. The coma that once glowed near the sun has long dispersed. Dust trails behind, like strands of thought unraveling into space. Each particle reflects a memory of heat, a brief shimmer of existence before it cools to stillness again. You picture those grains drifting for millions of years, each one a silent record of the comets passing through our solar symphony. On Earth, the signal once linked to 3I/A TLAS fades too. Static returns. The antennas that had strained to catch its rhythm now listen only to the background hum of the cosmos. Some scientists call it closure, others call it mystery unresolved. You simply feel the absence, not as loss, but as space opening up. The same way silence follows a note in music, deepening the sound that came before it. At night, you stand outside beneath the sky that once held it. You know the comet is still out there, invisible now, heading it into regions where sunlight never reaches. You wonder what forces guide its path. Gravity, certainly. Momentum, yes. But maybe also inevitability, the universal tendency for everything to drift outward, to seek the beyond. The comet's motion feels familiar because it mirrors your own longing, to move, to discover, to continue. You think about how every object in the universe is moving away from something. Stars, galaxies, even atoms within your body, all expanding, all stretching the fabric of space and time. Nothing stays still. Motion is the cosmos's language of persistence. The comet's retreat is simply one more sentence written in that endless grammar. It doesn't vanish. It becomes part of the universe's larger motion, part of a continuity that never ceases. Back at the observatory, the team begins archiving data. Spectral readings, trajectory models, energy curves, thousands of lines of numbers that capture the comet's brief intersection with humanity. For months, these datasets will be analysed, debated, and published. But long after the papers fade from memory, the feeling will remain, the awe of having witnessed something truly interstellar. You can't put that in a file. It lingers in the heart, not the hard drive. Somewhere deep in your thoughts, a quiet question surfaces. Why do we become attached to things that will never return? The comet wasn't ours. It didn't belong to Earth, or even the Sun. Yet, like all travellers, it awakened something human, the instinct to connect, to find meaning in motion. Perhaps farewells hurt not because of loss, but because they remind us that everything beautiful is temporary, and that temporariness is what gives it value. You close your eyes and imagine the comet still breathing faintly in the cold. Its nucleus, hardened by eons, remains intact. It carries within it the frozen story of the early universe. Molecules older than the planets, patterns of ice and carbon that remember the birth of light. Each fragment is a time capsule, holding the echo of cosmic beginnings. As it drifts, it becomes both messenger and message, a reminder that everything that leaves also carries traces of where it began. Telescopes across the world shut down their tracking sequences one by one. The last observations are filed, the equipment recalibrated. The universe, as always, provides new wonders to watch. Yet those who saw the 3I/TLAS pass will remember it differently, not as a comet, but as a moment of collective stillness. For a time, all eyes on Earth looked in the same direction. That alignment, rare and brief, was its own kind of communication. In classrooms and conferences, its story continues. Students learn about its orbit, its speed, its unique composition. They study graphs that describe its light curve, unaware that behind those graphs lies an emotion, the thrill of recognition, the whisper of something ancient brushing past us. Science measures what can be quantified. Wonder measures everything else. Months later, you revisit the stored recordings. The signal that once stirred debate now sounds ordinary, just another pattern among cosmic noise. But as you listen, you realize that meaning is not only in the data, it's in the attention given to it. When humanity chose to listen, the universe became a little more intimate. To seek is already to connect. To observe is to respond. You think of Voyager again, still travelling outward, its instruments long silent, but its purpose eternal. Every journey beyond sight becomes a metaphor for our own, the endless reaching toward understanding. Perhaps 3I/ATLAS is Voyager's distant cousin, another wanderer leaving traces of meaning in its wake. Both remind us that distance doesn't erase connection, it defines it. The comet will continue long after our species is gone. Its path will thread between stars that don't yet exist, through systems unborn. It may never encounter another observer, yet its dust will mingle with the material of new worlds. In that way, it becomes part of creation again, not as a visitor, but as a seed. You find peace in that thought. Endings are illusions. Everything drifts toward transformation. Standing alone beneath the fading constellations, you realize that the universe doesn't need witnesses, but it allows them anyway. To see something depart is to understand the privilege of perception. The comet's departure is not goodbye, it's continuity in disguise. What leaves sight does not leave being. You inhale the cold air, hold it, and let it go, a small echo of the comet's own exhale when it passed near the sun. Your breath joins the atmosphere joins the wind becomes part of planetary motion. The pattern repeats, from small to vast, from human to cosmic. Everything drifts, but nothing is lost. You turn toward the east, where the first light of dawn begins to lift the darkness. The sky seems quieter now, emptier perhaps, but also deeper. You understand that every departure carves room for the next arrival. The night yields to day, the comet yields to memory. And still, the universe continues its endless expansion of meaning. Somewhere beyond the edge of detection, 3I/ATLAS keeps moving, a silent ember in the dark. You know you'll never see it again, but that's all right. Some things are meant only to pass through our awareness once, leaving behind not answers but questions that shimmer long after. You close your eyes and let the stillness settle around you. The comet's trail, though invisible, feels alive in your mind, a luminous thread connecting what was to what might be. And as the light of morning washes the stars away, you sense a quiet truth emerging from the silence. Even when something drifts beyond sight, it never truly leaves the story. Because the story itself keeps moving, and soon you realize the universe will listen again. You've always imagined yourself as the one doing the listening, the quiet observer beneath the stars, the ear pressed against the silence of space. But tonight, as you stand beneath the deep translucent sky, something shifts. You feel the vastness leaning inward. The stars, the dust, the dark itself, all seem to be listening back. Our planet hums constantly, though we rarely think of it that way. From the crackle of lightning to the pulse of data through invisible air, Earth is a symphony of frequencies. Every broadcast, every heartbeat, every whispered word becomes part of an expanding wave that never stops traveling. Your laughter, recorded somewhere in the air, drifts outward too, a soft ripple moving through infinity. The idea feels almost intimate, the universe receiving you. Astronomers have long known that nothing said or sent ever truly disappears. Radio waves launched from Earth a century ago still move outward, a thin shell of human presence expanding at the speed of light. Within that sphere are the sounds of our species, greetings, music, static, mistakes. Somewhere perhaps 100 light years away, those early transmissions still travel, carrying fragments of who we were when we first began to wonder if someone might be listening. You think about that now, about how listening is also a kind of speaking. When you tune a radio telescope toward a comet or a star, you're not only hearing, you're offering attention. And attention changes the universe even in small ways. To listen is to acknowledge that something exists, that it matters enough to notice. Maybe that's why the act of listening feels sacred. It connects the observer and the observed in a shared awareness that spans light years. In distant galaxies, stars flare and fade, releasing their own messages in bursts of radiation and gravity. Pulsars beat with clock-like precision, quasars hum with ancient energy, black holes sing in gravitational waves. The cosmos has always been talking, not in words, but in frequencies too vast for ears. We are the ones who've just begun to learn how to hear. Yet as our detectors become more sensitive, we realize that listening outward also teaches us to listen inward. You imagine what the universe hears when it listens to Earth, perhaps the low thrumming of civilization, engines, oceans, electricity, perhaps the delicate music of thought, neurons firing, hearts beating. Maybe the pattern of storms and seasons sounds like breath. The planet itself becomes an organism speaking in magnetic sighs and atmospheric murmurs. If the cosmos listens, it must find us strangely alive, noisy, full of questions we barely understand. You remember the Voyager record, golden and spinning somewhere beyond the reach of sunlight. On it are greetings in dozens of languages, songs, and the sound of a kiss. When those waves left Earth, no one knew who or what would hear them. Yet the act of sending was enough. It was humanity saying, "We are here." You realize the same truth applies to listening. The act itself is a declaration that we belong to the dialogue of existence. Maybe the universe listens not with intention, but through nature's inherent interconnectedness. Every photon that strikes an atom changes the balance of energy. Every gravitational tug ripples through space-time. Communication in that sense is unavoidable. Every action, every orbit, every vibration is recorded somewhere, in some form. Nothing is forgotten. It's merely translated into new patterns. The Comet too has been translated now, its message continuing through dust and trajectory, its essence woven into the ongoing language of motion. For a moment, you close your eyes and imagine standing outside the galaxy, looking inward. From that distance, the Milky Way looks like a single glowing pulse, a heartbeat of billions of stars, each one radiating its own story. And within one faint spiral arm, a small blue planet hums with the rhythm of life. To the universe, maybe that's enough. It listens, and in listening it knows us. Back on Earth, scientists analyze faint radio bursts and X-ray signatures, mapping the chatter of the cosmos. Some signals repeat, others appear once and never again. Each detection stirs speculation, alien, natural, unknown. But you begin to suspect that unknown is the point. Mystery itself is the bridge between what listens and what is heard. Without it, the dialogue would end. The silence would have no texture. As you think about 3I/ATLAS now drifting beyond the reach of light, you wonder if it too has become a listener. Its frozen surface, bombarded by cosmic rays, vibrates subtly in the darkness. Perhaps it records the echoes of nearby stars, the murmurs of passing radiation. Maybe it even carries faint reflections of Earth's transmissions, the soft signatures of our curiosity brushing across its surface before fading into the void. In that sense, the comet and the planet remain connected, two listeners exchanging silence across unimaginable distance. It's humbling to realize that listening is not a passive act, but a form of participation. Every measurement, every gaze into the night sky adds another layer to the universe's awareness of itself. Through us, the cosmos perceives its own reflection. You are both an observer and an instrument, a tiny sensor of wonder, tuned to frequencies of beauty and meaning. When you stand beneath the stars and feel awe, that feeling is the signal returning home. The air grows colder, the night deepens, the Milky Way arches above like a great luminous ear curved to catch the whispers of creation. You think of all the sounds travelling through it, from the cry of a newborn to the crash of distant galaxies. In a universe without boundaries, perhaps every vibration eventually finds resonance. Maybe that's what eternity really means. Not endless time, but endless listening. You feel a quiet gratitude. The universe doesn't need to respond. Its listening is enough. Somewhere a photon that left your face this instant is now part of its story. Somewhere the atoms that once composed a star are now composing your thoughts. Connection is constant. Separation is illusion. The listener and the listened are one. You open your eyes and take a slow breath. The sky above seems closer now, not because the stars have moved, but because you've understood something essential. You are not just a receiver of the cosmos, you are part of its conversation. Every breath, every act of wonder sends a signal back. And as you let the silence stretch, you sense what comes next. The realization that maybe, all along, the message has been returning home through you. You close your eyes. The hum of the instruments fades, the glow of the screens dims, and in that brief darkness, everything becomes clear. The comet is no longer visible. Its orbit too far, its light too faint. Yet something remains, not out there in the void, but within you. A quiet understanding, a realization that all the signals, all the interpretations, all the mathematical beauty you trace through the cosmos were leading you to a single truth. The message was never external. It was always within the observer. The universe never speaks in words. It speaks in motion, in silence, in the soft unfolding of cause and effect. And in that language you realize you are fluent, not because you studied the stars, but because you were made from them. The carbon in your cells, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, all of it forged in the hearts of ancient stars long before you had a name. To listen to the cosmos is to listen to your own origin story whispered back through time. You think about how long this moment has taken to arrive, billions of years of collisions, cooling, evolution, and thought, all converging on this fragile, temporary consciousness capable of asking why. That question itself feels like the universe becoming aware of itself. The comet, the light, the instruments, the scientists, all were mirrors reflecting one another. Perhaps the cosmos doesn't want to tell you something. It wants to know if you can hear yourself. You recall the first time you saw 3I/ADLAS through a telescope. It was just a faint dot against infinity, yet it stirred something immense inside you. That feeling wasn't data, it was connection. You realize now that every discovery in science is also a confession of wonder. Every observation is an act of faith in meaning. To study the universe is to believe that understanding it matters. That belief is, in its own way, the most beautiful message of all. As you sit in the dim control room, monitors showing only static now, you imagine all the other worlds that might be looking outward too. Maybe somewhere on a small planet under a different sun, someone is wondering the same thing. Are we alone? Are we part of something larger? Are we being seen? The symmetry of that thought brings comfort, that curiosity is universal even if the answers are not. Outside, dawn begins to break. The sky lightens, not because the comet has returned, but because your own star, the sun, still burns faithfully. You realize that life, awareness, and meaning are not rare gifts bestowed from beyond, but emergent properties of the universe itself. The cosmos doesn't write letters, it writes lives, and you are one of them. You step outside, the air is cool, and the horizon glows faintly pink. For a moment, everything feels perfectly still. You can almost sense the motion of Earth beneath your feet, turning slowly toward the day. You think of all the signals leaving Earth, the radio waves, songs, digital transmissions, spreading outward into interstellar space, carrying fragments of human existence. But you no longer see them as desperate calls for recognition. You see them as the natural breathing of a planet alive with awareness. Each transmission says the same thing, in countless forms. We are here. The comet's journey, you realize, was not about arrival or departure. It was about perspective. Its brief presence in our sky reminded us that the universe is vast but not indifferent. It simply reflects whatever we bring to it. When you looked at the comet, you saw mystery, beauty, and meaning because you were capable of seeing them. The universe gives no promises, yet it allows understanding. That, perhaps, is its greatest kindness. As the light strengthens, you think of all the generations who looked up at the night sky, some with myth, some with mathematics, some with love. Each one added a layer to the conversation. You smile, knowing that the story continues, not because the comet will return, but because curiosity never ends. Somewhere a child may one day ask about a strange visitor that once passed through the solar system, and in that question, the universe will speak again. You breathe deeply, the morning air filling your lungs. You are part of the cycle now, matter turned into awareness, awareness turned into reflection. The comet fades beyond reach, but its trace endures in your thoughts, your memory, your renewed sense of belonging. You no longer feel the need to decode the cosmos. You simply stand in its vastness, understanding that you are the message, a fragment of the universe recognizing itself. The sky brightens completely. The stars vanish, not because they are gone, but because their light has been overtaken by another. You watch the sun rise, and for the first time it feels like an answer.